Hi guys, hi my son blazers and heroes. Guys, I'm kind of having a little bit of technical difficulty. This week I was trying some things new and I haven't quite mastered it. But regardless, we're gonna do this anyhow. They say champions adjust, and that's exactly what I've been having to do. I'm just trying to see how. Uh, Okay, I'm just trying to see if I can see. Well, I tell you what, let's just go ahead and go with it. As we go through this, we'll figure it out. Anyway, hello, hello, my beautiful sun blazers and heroes. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Rosie Lastra podcast, sponsored by Jeremy's Unity Flight. And this is actually my seventh episode, guys. We're working it. Okay. This is where we shine light on the darkest places and turn our struggles into strengths. I'm Rosie, and just like you, I've walked through rough valleys, faced challenges, and I've found that even in the darkest places, there's always a spark that wants to rise. Okay, this is a safe place where we laugh, we cry, and most of all, we grow together because here your story matters, your healing matters, and you matter. Okay, let's blaze the trail of hope together. Please let me know where you're tuning in from, and we're going to keep it rocking. All right. Before we really dive into what we're going to be talking about, I want to tell you a little bit about your captain in flight, which is me. Okay, I'm a transformational healing confidence coach who bridges faith and science to help men and women 35 to 65 turn grief into growth and loss into legacy. Through this work, I guide clients to align mind, body, and spirit so they can reclaim their health, resilience, and confidence and step boldly into a renewed life of purpose. For years, I lived in grounded logic. I was actually an accounting controller, believe it or not. But yeah, I was an accounting controller for several decades. But everything changed on January 9, 2015, when I received a divine dream. In that dream, my son Jeremy's presence ignited a mission far greater than I could have ever imagined to unite humanity through faith, healing, and testimony. What once was routine became revelation. My son Jeremy truly ignited the fire because unfortunately he passed away on September 15, 2024, from a rare form of liver cancer. 10 months after his passing, Jeremy's Unity Flight was born. Okay, not just a name, but a movement rising from love, grief, and divine assignments. Okay, this episode tonight, what we're going to be focusing on is how to overcome fear. Okay. Yes, so you guys know, I just recently at 64 overcame one of the most massive fears I've had all my life. And what's really, really wild is that not even my family knew I had it. See, all my life I carried a hidden fear. I was terrified of being recorded. Okay. Uh, but I would hide, it was like anytime the camera came out, Rosie would go wash dishes. I would go clean the house. I get busy. Okay. So I would always shy away from the camera. The only people that found out about it, and it was through a rare incident, was one of my mentors, Louis Ruiz, and my cousin Tito, and a few friends. We were actually in Arizona. I believe Erica might have been there too. We were actually at the Horseshoe Bend, and when we got into the van, I hear a recording, and I hear my voice. So I asked Lewis, I'm like, Lewis, did you record me? And he's like, yeah, I recorded everybody. I'm like, OMG. I'm like, let me look. And yeah, he had recorded me. I said, man, I said, you need to save that because that's going to go down in history. He's like, what do you mean? I said, yeah, I've never been recorded. He's like, what? So I let them know what was going on. And he's like, oh, no, no, no. We got to overcome this fear. And I'm a person that when I'm being challenged, I do my best to come to that, to rise to that occasion. And he actually challenged me that when we would get to Sedona, I had to do a Facebook Live. So when we got to Sedona, I went ahead and tried that Facebook Live, and I'll never forget it because I totally freaked out. I started stuttering. I was sweating all over. I'm like, oh, no, the people are going to see this. And I was totally freaking out. And Lewis says, Rosie, you can delete it. He deleted it for me. And I can laugh about it now, but at the moment, I was terrified. So, needless to say, that was back in like 2017. And since then, I really never tried again. And doing Jeremy's Unity Flight, my mentor, Darren, had told us at one point that we had to do a podcast. And he had no clue about my fear. And when he told us to do the podcast, I kind of put it off. I kept trying to record and nothing ever came. I kept deleting and it just wasn't working. And then, so when he tells us to do the podcast, like maybe a month and a half, 2 months later, I decided to reach out to him. And I tell him, I said, there, and I said, look, I said, I'm reaching out to you because we need to figure something out. I wanted to know if there's any possibility you could do like a one-on-one with me so you could teach me the it factor. And he tells me, he says, the it factor, what are you talking about? I said, yeah. I said, you know how some people got it, some people don't. Well, I want to have that it factor. I feel I need to be professional before I can start my podcast. And he's like, no, well, I didn't tell him I need to be professional. I told him I need to be professional. And he responded, well, have you started your podcast? And I'm like, no, because I need to be professional. And he says, get out of here. He says, girl, he says, I watched you on Zoom and you got it. You just got to get started. And I told him, I said, look, Zoom's a little bit different because in Zoom, I'm not the one doing the course. I'm just a student. And to me, that's different. But this, I'm going to have to be the main one. And he's like, look, you got it. And him and me talked for a while. And he actually gave me the motivation. And I promised him that I would do my podcast that following Friday. Luckily, one of the girls from our community, Sonia, was graceful enough to tell me she would be on my podcast, and because she had reached out to me, wanted me to be on hers. So when I talked to her, I said, well, why don't you come on mine? And that's what we ended up doing. And at the very first podcast, OMG, I was so nervous. But Sonia helped me out because she was there. So it made it a little bit easier. And I only ended up like doing 15 minutes because I try to end it quickly. But yeah, and then my second podcast, I decided I was going to share with you guys my decade journey and how Jeremy's Unity Flight actually came about. And so I spent probably about a week and a half just writing a whole decade's journey so I could prepare for the podcast. And lo and behold, after I get done and I look at that, I'm like, oh, wow, this could be a book. So, guys, I overcame my fear, and then God showed me other things that could come from it. And because of overcoming that fear, because of doing the podcast, now I've actually finished the book, which is going to be published in January. Okay. So this is multiple blessings and it's getting ready to get, and I've also shifted. So tonight I'm going to be speaking to you about several things. I'm going to be speaking to you about how I overcame this fear and how what I did, both the Bible and science, show that's why it worked. Okay. And I'm going to give you 3 easy steps on how to be able to overcome it yourself. Okay. So let's go ahead and dive in. Like I explained to you guys, the very first thing I did is, number one, before I even talked to Darren, I had already identified the actual fear. I remember that before I started working with the iconic community. I never knew why I was afraid of videos. I really didn't. I just knew I avoided them at all costs. I had no idea what the fear existed. And then in one of the courses of Darren, he brought up identifying fears. So I kind of dove deep into it, and I started doing research, and I started looking and finding, and uh, I went through. I kind of went online and looked up all the possible reasons why somebody could be afraid of camera, and I came up with like 10 or 15 reasons, and I was looking, and I'm like, no, that's not me, and that's not me, and that's not me. And finally I came up to one. I'm like, there it is. Okay. And it was actually the reason why I always feared camera is because I've always felt that in order to be in front of camera, you have to be professional. Like I said, I felt you had to have that it factor. And I've never been really sure about the way I speak, or because I also have a fear of speaking for the most part. Okay. So, and it's all comes to the same thing. It's about being, I am a little bit of a perfectionist when it comes to that. So I was always really concerned. So once I identified the fear, okay, that I actually gave it a name, okay, I actually realized, okay, it's about perfectionism. So this is my perfectionist fear. Okay. Then it wasn't as scary, believe it or not. Okay. So very first thing I did was identify the fear. Okay. And once I identified it, I went ahead and made commitments and figured out how to add action towards it. Okay. So, and if you go to the Bible on 2 Timothy 1:7, for God has not given us a spirit of fear, but but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Okay. And then when you go to Joshua 1, and this is everything I looked at before I even the first episode. Okay. Then I looked up and saw Joshua 1:9. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid, nor be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. And then in Isaiah 41:10, fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Yes, I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. So after reading all those, I used them as affirmations. Okay. And actually, I promised Darren also, aside from doing the podcast, I would also do a video before the podcast. And I literally spent 3, 4 days where I would videotape myself. I mean, I had everything written out, and I would videotape myself, and then I would delete it. And I would videotape myself, and I would delete it. And OMG, I know I did over 200 a day. Okay, so I did well over 500 takes before I finally, and even the last one that I finally decided to load, I wasn't happy with it. I thought I sounded horrible and looked horrible, but I posted anyway. I'm like, okay, God, you tell me no courage. I got to have courage, and I got to fear not. So let's do this. Okay. So I went ahead and posted it. And lo and behold, I went that posting, that very first one, ended up with right now today I have over 400 views, and prior to that I never did over like 20 views. So that was incredible. Okay, so and then when I after all this, I went ahead and looked up the science into it, because that week I did do the podcast with Sonia, and it actually came out better than I expected. And then I did the podcast by myself, which ended up being a whole hour. Okay, and I ended up having to shorten the story. So, what were the scientific steps that allowed me to overcome this fear? Is, there's a thing called neuroscience, where your fear is in the amygdala. Okay. And what happens is the amygdala is what protects you. Okay. When you have, when, and this is what's amazing and incredible that people don't realize, and I didn't even realize it, is that your amygdala doesn't know the difference between fear or excitement, because your body reacts the same way to fear and excitement. The only time your amygdala knows to protect you is because, oh, that's the same feeling, same thing I had, and that's where the confusion lies. Okay, that I had the last time that I got hurt or the last time I fell. So now it's going to protect you. Okay, so if once you recognize that you've got the system, that your body is feeling excited or in fear. Okay, if you stop yourself and you've already identified the fear, okay, now you replace it with a truth and not the lie. You, in other words, see, fear is false expectation appearing real. And of course, your amygdala is going to say, oh, no, no, that's dangerous. But if you replace it with, no, I'm excited, okay, now you are actually, you're creating neuroplasticity. So you're actually rewiring your brain. Okay, you're actually shifting your thoughts. And by doing that, you're changing your state. You're changing from fear to excitement. And by doing that, you're able to overcome it. Okay, so it's called neuroplasticity, and you're basically rewiring your brain. Okay, so by me recording myself 500 times, I I rehardened those pathways, and I reestablished. I went from 64 years of certain pathways, okay, to in a very short time rewiring everything and reshifting it, okay. And yes, I still am fearful. I'm still not 100% over it, but I'm much, much better than I was, okay. So the 3 steps you should take to be able to come out of fear is you identify the fear, okay, and give it a name, okay. And then, and some, I mean, and I was listening to a psychiatrist who actually had her patient, like, her patient was afraid of driving, okay, and she actually asked her patient, is there somebody in your family or a friend that anytime uh that you kind of think they're funny, or when they say something you laugh, or you think, OMG, they're so silly. And so she gave her a name. So what this psychologist did is she said, okay, this is what you're going to do. You're going to go ahead and pretend that you've got that person in the car with you. Let's say her name is Sam. Okay, so now you're going to name her Sam, and you're going to tell Sam, look, you're going to ride next to me on the passenger side, okay? And I'm going to take the wheel, okay? And I know you're afraid of driving, so I'm driving for you, okay? And by doing that, this woman actually was able to end up driving. And she even called up the psychiatrist and said, I don't know if I'm doing it wrong, because I'm not as fearful as I thought I would be. So your rewiring is, you're renaming it. It's not as fearful because now it's outside of you, and then eventually you come back to it. Okay, so you replace it. You basically replace it with truth, and then so you identify the fear. You replace it with truth, either scripture or claiming science-based practices. Like I've explained to you, and then you take messy imperfect action. And that was what I did when I did the 500 takes. Okay, that was what this woman did by actually getting behind the wheel, putting Sam beside her, and actually driving. Okay, so as you're doing this, you actually, little by little. Now, Mel Robbins has got something she calls a 5-second rule. Okay, and if you get an opportunity, you might want to look it up, but it's pretty fascinating, because that's how Mel Robbins is able to shift. The minute she has a fear that hits her, she'll go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and by doing that, she explains that she's actually telling her amygdala uh, to that she's got control. So her amygdala relax, and then once she tells her amygdala to relax, then that's when she goes ahead and replaces it with the truth. that she's excited. Like if you're on a plane, if you're fearful of planes, and you get those feelings, the first thought is, oh God, I don't want to get on the plane. Change it. Think about, you're going on a trip. So you're either going to go meet somebody or see somebody, or you're going and think about how much fun you're going to have when you go there. Okay. Think about how much love you're going to have with your family. So the minute the feelings start, that you feel your body producing all these sensations, okay, tell your heart, oh, I can't wait till I go see my family. Oh my God. And now all of a sudden you've changed from fear to excitement, and your heart. And that's another thing that's really, that I've been kind of like blown away, because through this research, I found out that your heart is actually an energy producing organ. So your heart is producing energy constantly. Okay. And your heart, and see, I've always told everybody in my family, I always told them, go with your heart. Your mind will trick you, but your heart never does. And boy, was I dead on, because I'm finding out now that your heart actually has memory. Your heart actually has intelligence, and your heart gives your brain more information than your brain gives your heart. Okay, so when all these feelings, the chemistry in your body goes through your heart, and that your heart sends the signals to your brain, and then the amygdala decides what those signals mean. Okay, so that's why there's that confusion. That's why your brain doesn't know between the truth and the lie. So the brain will believe whatever story the amygdala tells it. So I'm finding out that when you feel all those sensations on your body and all those chemicals are released in your body, if you go ahead and, like I said, you identify the fear and you go ahead and rewire it and shift it and replace it with a truth, okay, and don't buy into that lie. You could do the 5-second rule, or do like I did. Just make a decision that you're going to be the best. Actually, that's what ended up happening. After I talked to Darren, I said, okay, fine, I'm going to end up being the best in the podcast business. Okay. And I'm working towards that. And thank you, Jesus. I don't have a big following right now. So I'll work through this. Okay. And right now it's about working through me. And eventually I'll be able to help more of you. Okay. So, and right now here I am, sooner than later. Okay. I'm able to give you advice that I know is going to help some people. So I know it's going to help a lot of people, because it sure as heck helped me. Okay. So guys, thank you for being here. You could be a million and one places, but you chose to be here. Okay. I'm going to tie this all back in to how I was able to overcome mine. I think I've already said it, but I'm going to repeat it. I'm going to finalize this. Okay. We're going to go in for the landing. Okay. Like I said, I identified the fear before I even talked to Darren. I had already identified the fear. Okay. Then I went ahead and replaced that fear by changing my story. Okay. And then I just did it over and over and over again until I was able to release it. Okay. So I identified the fear. I replaced the lie with truth. And then I took messy, imperfect action. And today, here I am. Okay. So, guys, my sun blazers and heroes, keep shining, keep rising, and keep believing in miracles of your own journey. Until next time, keep blazing bright, because the world needs your shine. All right. Thank you, and have a wonderful and blessed day. Bye bye.